Hello there, David Taylor on Mr. Pelargonium, back with another video for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. I haven't done a chat about the National Pelargonium Show, which is coming up in just under 7 weeks' time. Haven't spoken about that at all, primarily because I think I haven't got a monumental number of plants I'm going to be able to show this year. But we'll get on to that now. So let's have a look at what's going on with regard to my plants to do with the show. Hello there, well, welcome back to the channel. I'm filming this on May the 1st, which in the UK is a public holiday. And I've done a couple of videos. I just shot the one before lunch about composts. So my compost trial that I'm undertaking now. But I thought at the same time, I haven't actually spoken much at all about the upcoming show. Time really does fly on, and as I say, it's the 1st of March today. We are just past the 7-week timetable to it. Just last Saturday would have been 7 weeks to the show. And it does have to be said that I've not had a brilliant season with regard to bringing plants on, primarily because, as I've said many a times, in the UK we're having a very cool spring. It has warmed up, thankfully, in the last week. Temperatures are getting up here. It's actually 20 degrees in here at the moment, 20 degrees centigrade, so about 68 Fahrenheit for our American friends. And it is finally beginning to warm up marginally. It's only that warm because I've got the glass house shut to do the video. And it has actually just started raining a little bit as well. But the good thing is at least it has warmed up a bit. So stuff is really beginning to move at long last. Well, I've got a little bit of bloom for plants I haven't stocked for show. But with regarding my show plants, I've not got that many. I lost a great number of zonals during the winter. I didn't have a very successful winter at all. I think I said the autumn was very wet and a lot of my zonals just got the rot in, and once that sets in, they just go. And certainly a lot of my older dwarfs have gone. I've actually only got one dwarf left for hopefully show, but this needs to develop a great deal more. I mean, this is an old plant. This is a 4-year-old plant. In June it'll be 4 years old, funnily enough. But it's growing away fairly well. It's Bold Cherub, which I always use for show work. But it needs to put on a decent bit of weight yet. It's got 7 weeks to really bulk out. It's just beginning to throw a couple of buds. But with regard to show work, you need to let your buds run now and just see how it goes. Just sort of take them off as and when we get near the show for those that begin to go over. I've got a fair number of what we call the floribundas, which are basically overgrown dwarfs. Again, though, they need to put a bit of bulk on. I'm still feeding these with a balanced feed, just as I say, to sort of get them pushing on. They're not big. They're not. I think I want to say that we had this same problem last year, where they just didn't put on that much bulk. They did as the season really developed on, but this year is a very different year because last year it was very sunny. So consequently, in the glass house, the temperatures did get up quite high. But this year, it's a very slow season. I'm going to put that one out because I've got a dead stem that just needs chopping off. Certainly for the National, I'm wondering whether I may think about getting some of my really big standards to the show this year. I've got this one which always does exceptionally well. I've grown this for a number of years. You would have seen this in my garden last year. This is 5 foot tall and it's got about 3 giant stakes holding it up. It's a basic zonal. I'm going to take the camera off just to show you a few other bits. So yeah, certainly with regard to this one, I'm hopeful that this is going to put on quite a good size. It's a steep pollard seedling. It's unnamed. It's got the spots and splashes, which I know not a lot of people like. But It's got the stem is getting on for 3/4 of an inch thick. Thankfully, because I'm show secretary, I get a big van. So I can get these sorts of plants to show, which I know is an asset, but certainly to get a giant plant like this to a show, you would almost certainly need a van. Other standards that I've got, I mean, these are unstopped. This is a standard of Delhi, the Regal, just beginning to come into bloom. That's quite attractive, and it's doing very well. I've got a couple of those that have grown on over time. I've got a lot of others. This is my Adenjo Tinto Mara. This is a Swedish thing, and it's growing absolutely mad. I'm strapping up some of the lower stems, but I'm growing this as a multi-stem standard, and I think this is looking pretty exceptional, actually. Liking the look of that. One for future is a standard of Candy Dancer. This is quite a really big boy. It's just beginning to come into flower, actually. It's a standard. Just about see the stem of that. But that will need probably potting on in not too distant a time. But it's growing on very strongly. It's doing very well. I've got a few multi-stem standards here. These are growing okay again. A lot of these are unnamed seedlings. Now, something to watch out for, and I will actually, something to watch out for, I'll just go back to this plant a moment, is immature heads. And this is what we get early in the season. We get these immature heads. You can see here, this is almost sort of deformed, and I will break that off. I will break all these off. It's what happens early in the season when you get a lot of strength go through to produce these blooms, and they all come out deformed. Doesn't happen to all plants. I mean, there's a Stella here. These are fine. There's nothing wrong with those. And there's nothing wrong with that Delhi Regal over there. But it does happen to Regals. And this is a plant of Marie Rudling. And exactly the same has happened to the head of that. You get these deformed blooms that almost appear cut. But they're not. They will revert back to a normal bloom later in the season. It's just this early sort of developed head, this power that the plants get to really want to push out and bloom, and they just get a little bit deformed in doing it. It's just one of the characteristics of early blooming. But it does happen, can happen to any of the types. More often than not, singles don't get affected. But here's a Stella with exactly the same problem, if I can focus the camera. This has got exactly the same problem. These heads are deformed. They're much larger and much more sort of full double bloom normally. And that shows you that it happens to Stellas as well. But we've got a couple of other standards that I'm hopefully getting to show. This is a butterfly Brian West. Again, it's just beginning to bloom. But I will let these blooms run now and take off. About a month before, I will take off certainly anything that I know is going to be, that I know will have gone over by the show time. But that's doing okay. I entered that in the show last year when it was less developed. So that's got a really good full head on it now. And another standard there, this has got a name. This is another Steve Pollard seedling. That's Rushmore Tom Kirkland. That's been given the name. But that's getting quite a good sizable head on it as well. So I'm hopeful of getting some of these to the show this year. But realistically, it's been a pretty poor year in getting sort of zonals through the winter. Now, we got this Stad Burn. I always like to think that I could get this to a show, but one of the problems with Stad Burn, as I've said, is that it develops quite late. It's almost grows like a miniature, and these dark leaf sort of miniature stroke dwarf type plants, they really take a long time to get going in the spring. And this year, because it's been so cool, they're even a bit later than usual. So very questionable as to whether that will be suitable for showing this year. By the midsummer, that will be a lovely full head, but whether that will be ready in 7 weeks' time is probably unlikely. Now I've got my giant standard, sort of a similar size to that other seedling one that we got over there. This is Phyllis. This is growing away very well. Again, I don't think the head is going to have enough bulk on it to be able to show it this year, but I'm certainly hopeful that in coming years that will be ready for showing. It's growing quite well. That's about 5 foot tall. Now, one that has grown fairly well for me is my own Berries S. This is a scented angel. It's a standard. If I take that one out, you can see just about all the way down. It's got a relatively thin main stem at the moment, which is slightly disappointing. It means you have to strap it up quite heavily. But that the head of this is developing very well. I am actually feeding that with high potash feed because angels can very much open out if you don't give them a high potash feed, which will in turn, give the body a bit of strength to stop it flopping about. But that's growing very well actually, and I'm pleased with how that's developed. Certainly, again, in years to come, that will do very well. There is a chance I may get it to the show this year, though. So looking down this end, this is my Regals. That's one of mine. Elsie Taylor, another one of mine, Shriven and Pearl. But the Zophia Popes, they're just beginning to get away now. See all this new vibrant growth. It's funny how they really, really do put on a lot of growth and power in this sort of late period leading up to a show. They're all slow and then all of a sudden they just suddenly grow away. I will probably get rid of a lot of these older leaves and let it really put on the weight to grow, and hopefully, who knows, I may get something out of it for the show. A couple of trained plants. Got one up the back there, that's just beginning to come out. I've got a couple of others there. Again, that one's slightly disappointing. That's Mrs. Pollock. And this one of Petals, again, has done okay, but I've actually tipped that just about a week ago. It was just getting way too tall, and I wanted it to put some effort into growing out around this middle block here. So I took the decision, I just went for it. I mean, who knows? I clipped the top, and hopefully that will all tidy up in about the next 7 weeks or so. But I'm wanting it to put on a bit of weight in the middle, and that's what I'm hoping anyway. So we'll have to see how that goes. Right, now something I will show you, I'll just show you this where I put this down on my bench because I showed you I've got a little break there. Well, this was a stop, but the end has effectively died. It's dry, it's fine, there's no sort of rot on it or anything. I've got a little undergrowth coming from it there. Hopefully you can see that. Oh, if I focus the camera without banging. So I'm going to stop that back to that joint there. That's actually a flower joint above it. But this is effectively useless and it's just untidy. So I'm just going to slice that off above that node, above that little underbreak there, just to tidy that up. And you can do that if you've done a stop, but nothing is growing from it. If it looks as if it may sort of look a little bit untidy, you can cut those off. But as usual, this is quite dry. Make sure you're doing it when it's dry so that it seals off quite easily and quickly before you give it another water. Yeah, so there we are. I thought I'd just show you a few bits and pieces of mine that I'm maybe hoping to get to the show. So that's it from me today. Bye-bye for now.